Hello, and welcome to the final installment of the Federal Flash for 2017. I'm Monica Allman, and I'm joined by Nikki McKinney. For those of you expecting a report on Education Secretary DeVos's hearing before the House Education Committee, it was postponed. Check the committee's website for updated scheduling information. The Secretary has sent feedback to more than a dozen states on their accountability plans under the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA. And this week, Congress delivered a major legislative victory to the president while simultaneously trying to avoid a government shutdown. Let's turn to Nikki for more information on the ESSA plans.
Well, Monica, for our viewers in Alabama, Alaska, Georgia, Kansas, Maryland, Minnesota, Montana, New York, North Carolina, Puerto Rico, South Dakota, Utah, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming, you can access the department's feedback letters to your state education agencies at the link below. The letters cover a wide range of issues within the plans, including long-term goals, how states will meaningfully differentiate schools based on performance, and how states propose identifying schools for comprehensive and targeted support. In most cases, the department is seeking additional information or clarity from states whose plans lack sufficient detail in order to determine whether or not they comply with the statute. As we know from the first round of submissions, the department called out states for some deficiencies within their plans, but didn't necessarily require sweeping changes to be made before the plans were approved. We'll see how states in this second round respond to the department's feedback.
This week, the House and Senate passed landmark tax reform legislation, allowing President Trump to deliver a, quote, big, beautiful Christmas present, end quote, to the American people his first year in office. The tax measure moved through Congress on a timeline much faster than many thought was possible. We were tracking a number of education-related provisions included in earlier versions of the bill, specifically elimination of the $250 deduction teachers can make for supplies, consolidation of the current higher education tax credits, and elimination of deduction of interest paid on student loans, as well as the deduction for tuition and related expenses provided by colleges and universities. Fortunately, the final compromise measure retains all of these benefits as they exist under current law. But it isn't all good news.
That's right, Monica. The deduction for state and local taxes, or SALT, was capped at $10,000. As we have cautioned in the past, the loss of the full deduction for SALT could affect the ability of states and localities to raise revenue for education. And while individual tax rates drop, most of those cuts expire after 8 years, while the corporate tax cuts are permanent. Finally, this bill has a nearly $1.5 trillion price tag, which almost every reputable economist agrees won't be fully paid for through economic growth alone. That means that we will see higher deficits in the coming years. And as we all know, when there are high deficits, many in Congress will use that as an excuse to call for federal spending cuts to offset that impact. And what's usually on the chopping block? Funding for domestic spending, including education, infrastructure, and healthcare. So buyer beware.
At the time we filmed this flash, Congress was still working on a deal to keep the government open past December 22nd, when the current funding bill is set to expire. As we reported in last week's episode, it is expected that Congress will pass another short-term funding measure from December 22nd to January 19th, giving them more time to work out a compromise. But partisan priorities and GOP infighting have been difficult obstacles to surmount. We may need to ask Santa and his elves to keep the government open. Finally, on January 11th, All4Ed is hosting a webinar on the pros and cons of school rating systems. To register for the webinar, visit the link below. That's all for now. We'll see you in 2018. For an alert when the next episode of Federal Flash is available, email us at alliance@all4ed.org. Thanks for watching.
Federal Flash is the Alliance for Excellent Education's video series on important developments in education policy in Washington, D.C. in 5 minutes or less.